Hello everyone, Lore Master of Sotech here with a pretty chill video for today to talk about some stuff that has been very active in my life lately, and I think it would be of interest to many of you as it's likely going to have a community forming around it very soon. So, this video, we're not talking about anything Total War related. This is just talking about this game called Tabletop Simulator. And the reason I'm talking about it is because lately a lot of people have been coming to me asking me to teach them how to use this program, or game rather, due to the fact that people have kind of started to figure out in wider communities that you can use Tabletop Simulator to play either Age of Sigmar or Warhammer 40k on tabletop. So today I'm going to be showing you how all that works, so that for those of you who want to join into that community, you can. And once things get a little further off the ground, you might see me displaying games here on the channel, in addition to hosting tournaments or classes or what have you. So before we begin, Tabletop Simulator, just so you know, is just a very simple game you can pick up off Steam. I think it's in the ballpark of $20, though it goes on sale fairly often. It's a very popular game, simply because it has such a free and open workshop that you can basically play any board game or tabletop game you can think of on here, so long as there's a mod for it, which we'll be going over the mods, which are of course very relevant to what we'll be looking at today. So this is what happens when you open it up and play some corny music, and I'm just gonna kind of walk y'all through how to open up everything, and we're gonna talk about mods at the end. So the game I've been playing primarily today, or recently, is 40k. I've been playing quite a few games lately, but obviously Age of Sigmar I play fairly often as well on here. For Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, for those of you who still play Warhammer Fantasy, I would recommend using universalbattle.com still over this, or Universal Battle 2, which is a program that you can download. I think Tabletop Simulator is inferior to those systems when it comes to the block style movement that Warhammer Fantasy relied on. But anyway, let's begin. So when you are looking to create a lobby or a game, you're basically just going to click the create button, and you're going to open up multiplayer. And then you'll need to put down a server name, and it has to be a unique name. You can't just put in like ABC, because if someone else has a game open, it'll not let you do anything. So try and come up with something original. So I have like 40k Hoedown for mine. Then a password if you want it, and then you can do anywhere between 10 to 2 players. If you want to have somebody watching in the game, you need to create more slots, or you can just like have them watch through your Steam account. But we're just going to do 2 for now. You'll do create server, and then it'll take a moment to get it up and running, just like this. And then it's going to ask you to pick a game. So for this, there's Classic, which has some pretty basic games, but to look at 40k and Age of Sigmar, we're going to be going to the workshop. So for the workshop, as you can see, I have a ton of things on mine. I've got the Chaos in the Old World with Horned expansion, which I hope to be showcasing soon. But I'm just going to show you all today how to set up an army. So I play Tyranids in 40k, so I found a mod that I really like that has all the Tyranid models at the appropriate size and base size, and has everything I could possibly need. Unfortunately, they're in Kraken colors, but I can't help that. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click load. And now what it's going to do is it's going to bring up all the assets on the board, which is going to take a minute because there's just a lot of Tyranids. The good news is, once you've opened it the first time that day, as long as you basically don't close out the program, unless you have an SSD of course, but if you don't have an SSD like me, once you've opened it for the day, it'll open a lot faster on future openings, until you shut the program down. As you can see though, I've got all the Tyranids in the world that I need, fairly easy and straightforward. So what I would do to select my armies, I'd obviously make my list outside of the game. And then basically I would just create a space, so like I'm not going to use any of these models, so I'll just delete them. And then I would just go in, find the models that I do want, like a Trigon, maybe some Warriors, Death Leaper, a Flyrant, a Maliceptor, Hormagaunts to Termagants, you know, and so on and so forth. Gene Stealer, whatever. Once you have, and you only need one of every model type in your army. And you'll notice that some of these guys, like these warriors, have multiple variants that have been created by the modder. So you can select the one that best represents how you've built your guys. For instance, if I've made a group that was bone swords and rending claws, I could choose this warrior because he's more representative of that particular build. Some of them, they don't have all the variants, but most, they're pretty good about it. But if they don't, you can always just change the name. For instance, I know that not the Tyrant Guard, but the Hive Guard, who are around here somewhere. Okay, here they are. The Hive Guard on this mod only have one option, though they can be built multiple ways. But anyway, once you have your army that you like, you're just going to click and drag with the left mouse button and make sure you get their bases and the model. Some of them, the models aren't exactly attached to the bases, so if you select one, you might not select both. So make sure you click and drag and all of them are highlighted, and then you're just going to Control-C to make copies. A note I should make, once you invite someone to your game, whoever's hosting gets to choose the game. So whoever's hosting needs to have the mods for every single player that's playing. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to open their army. So they need to send you their mods so that you can have access to them, or they need to copy them separately. So they can like go in, copy it themselves, and then meet you. When you want to invite someone, as long as you have a multiplayer lobby, you would just go to invite friends, choose who you like, and then they'll appear up here, and they'll have to select a color, which change color is pretty straightforward. It just brings you in like this, and I would select red, for instance. But this is very important. If you are the host, the #1 thing you need to do before anything else is as soon as their name shows up on this little bar, you know, there'll be a separate bar for each player. You're going to right-click on them, right on their name, and you're going to see a button called Promote. And you need to click Promote. And see how I've got this crown next to my name? If someone has been promoted, it'll give them a badge. And it kind of looks like a stereotypical police badge from United States. And so long as they have that badge, they have the ability to copy and paste models, and they have the ability to delete things. If they don't have those abilities, they cannot bring their army onto the map, and there will be problems. So you need to make sure that you take care of that. Alright, so I've selected my army. Now, assuming my opponent has not selected his army, I would now go up to Games, Workshop, and then let's say I was fighting a Necron player. So I'd click on the Necrons here, and click Load. And then we'd wait, and if you ever get this kind of thing, this just means that some of the models didn't, or like the board, or some of the textures are old, or just didn't load in. You can just X out of that, it's not really a big deal. If there's like a model missing, or maybe their texture doesn't come in right, you might have to speak to the modder to get it fixed, but most of the time it's just some small asinine issue. Okay, so once they all load in, try not to touch anything until they do. My opponent would then go around through this Necron army, for instance, grab all the units that he wants, and then he would also Control-C them. Something else that I want to go over real quick, and some players will need to know this information. You may notice when you zoom in that when I hover over this model, you see those 5, or those, how many is it, 6 purple, that little like blue star thing above the name where it says Tomb Blade. So right above that, there are 6 points in the shape of a star. If you right click on the model and you go to State, which has the exact same symbol right here, this 5-pointed star with a circle in the center, you can try multiple states, which once it loads in, will give you like an alternate form of that weapon. Some modders do that. So like these Tomb Blades, for instance, have multiple forms, but instead of just putting them all out as different units, he has put them as different states. For instance, this one has a 3rd state as well, so I'd click on the 3, and once the asset loads in, we'll see what the 3rd state. So you can tell, this is the 1st state, this is the 2nd state, and this is the 3rd state. You can tell how different they are. So keep an eye out for that when you're looking to customize your models. Once both of us have our armies copied, you know, which I did have to promote him to do, don't forget promoting. we'll then go to a map where we'll play a game. So you'll go to Games again, DLC Workshop, and there are tons of maps. You just gotta look around and have fun, and you'll eventually find a cool map. So let's, for instance, go to this 40K snow map. So I'm going to click Load, and it's going to bring us on to a pretty simple map. Nothing too complicated. You can tell this was for an older edition based on all these little things here, but there are tons of interesting maps. This one's pretty basic, and all I would do is I would kind of select down here and hit Control V. Control V, and my army's not spawning because I goofed something up. Well, oh well. So I goofed something. That's fine. I actually get because I missed something, I now have to go back. Wait for everything to load in, which you can see it's loading much faster this time because we've already been here. I'm going to try this again. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do Control C, and then I'm going to go to the workshop, and I'm going to go. Let's actually try a more exciting map this time. Let's try. Let's go to this forest map. And there are some maps that are very busy, some maps that are very simple. It's up to your personal taste. You can also use fantasy maps, which I tend to prefer the Age of Sigmar maps, just due to the fact that they tend to have more customization options. These maps usually are just here, and you just have to deal with it. Okay, so this time when I hit Control V, there we go. So my army would then spawn. Now, so the reason I tell you earlier to only select one of each guy you need, say you have multiple biovores here. This guy's a biovore. So if I just Control C, once I have everyone on here, I can just V, and just make as many as I need to. And with you and your opponent doing that at the same time, you can save a little bit of time. If you both go to your own mods beforehand and Control C and then come on here and Control V, you can of course do this in the army selection screen. Once you're on the map, you know, just play through the rules of 40K, which we're not going to cover today. I'm not going over any rules. I'm just explaining to you how the system works. Once you're on the map, there are a couple of options you need to know about that the system has. To control models, you simply hover over them, click them, and you can drag them around. If you want to increase how high you pick them up off the ground, you go to this little dude here that's lifting weights. And this will give you lift height. So if you turn it up really high, pick up this guy, he comes really high off the ground. If I turn it really low, he only comes a little bit off the ground. If you go over objects, he'll float above it. Sometimes this can become a problem. Like if I was trying to place like next to one of these boulders, say I wanted to place like right here. Well, this map actually has pretty good collision. Some maps don't have the best collision. Where the collision might go out way beyond what you would think, and it can cause problems, but thankfully this map's not one of them, unless these tree branches are a problem. Nope, this map's actually pretty well designed. Kudos to whoever made this. Other things is when you pick up a model, you can rotate your mouse wheel to change what direction they face, or you can use the Q and E keys to rotate them accordingly. W, A, S, and D are how you move around the map. If you right-click and hold it down, it'll allow you to drag the screen around however you would like. This can be really helpful, for instance, in like 40K where you're measuring line of sight. Maybe you need to zoom in and literally go inside your model's head, right where his eyes would be, and make sure it's relatively in line with it, if I can get it. That's good. And then you can see from his perspective to see if he can draw a line of sight to something, for instance. Try not to go into the map. Outside of that, if your models get flipped over, so like if I bring all these guys together like this and I throw them, so they become a big old mess, right? Not too difficult to clean up. All I have to do is highlight them, hit the F key, and I'll flip them right back up. And you know, you can kind of throw your guys around and do what you ever need to do to fix them. Sometimes there will be little issues, and you're just going to have to figure out the best way to solve the problem. If someone falls off, it's not too big of a deal. Don't panic. They will respawn, just like that, somewhere on the map, usually in the center. Other than that, the only other things that you really need to know, if you create an objective, for instance, so like one of these, let's say I want this to be, why is this pinned down? That's very strange. Oh, it's got like a screw in it. Isn't that interesting? In any event, Some of these don't. I'm not sure why these ones do have screws. That's very odd. But let's say you place down an objective onto the battlefield, and you want it to stay there so that, for instance, if this guy's moving over it and you don't want to accidentally pick it up and move it by selecting multiple guys, for instance, what you can do is right-click on it, and then you go to Toggles, and you hit Lock. And that makes it so that it can't be selected on accident, so you can't even, like, if a bunch of models died on top and you just click drag and hit delete, you don't accidentally delete your objective markers. And you can unlock anything by left-click or right-clicking and unclicking lock. And that works for terrain. You'll notice I can't select any of this terrain, but if I hover over it specifically and right-click, I can then go to Toggles, hit Lock, and that'll cause it to unlock from its position, which in this case caused it to fly away. Or you could use that, say, if you were like, oh man, I really hate this boulder, that'll let me delete it. On top of that, other little things, you have rotation degrees here, which are not super helpful, but you can kind of mess around with that if you'd like. There are a couple of other little things worth interest. If you come onto a map and you notice that whenever you set a unit down, it is snapping. You see there's a grid here, but the grid isn't actually causing this thing to snap to anything. I can put it down wherever I wish. Some maps, that's not the case. You'll come on here and if that's turned on, you'll notice now when I put him down, he's now snapping where I don't want him to be. So he's moving every time I drop him, which can be very frustrating. And the way you fix that, you simply go to Options, then you go to Grid, and you turn snapping off. That one tends to be on a lot of maps and can cause problems. And of course, there are plenty of other interesting little things you can mess with, such as gravity, change the server password if someone figures it out and you don't want to deal with them. You can change permissions so people don't have the ability to do certain things, so on and so forth. Yeah, there's some interesting turn things. Other than that, if you need to generate anything, you simply can either go back to the relevant game to grab units that maybe you missed or something, or you can even save them by right-clicking on something and click Saved Object, and then you can right-click elsewhere. Oh, wait, no. So you'll go to Object, and then you can go to Saved Objects, and that'll let you spawn something. For instance, a fellow I was playing the other day found these cool Necron dice, so I saved them just because they're kind of interesting, so you could just make like a whole bunch of dice if you want. Speaking of dice, once you've made a suitable amount for the game that you're playing, whether it be a 40k game, an Age of Sigmar game, or miscellaneous, you can create plenty of them, just like that. And the way to roll dice in this game is there's actually a roll function, so you don't have to like shake them like some kind of fool and look like an idiot. All you do is you either hover over the dice you want to roll, or you can select the dice you want to roll, and you just hit the R button a few times, and that'll give you a really nice, satisfying, random roll. And you can just do like that, and it's not a big deal. The only downside to this system is it doesn't allow you to highlight and see all the dice that you rolled in order, like ones together, twos together, and so on and so forth. All it does is it adds them up into a big number. So you will have to go through and kind of pick out, like if you needed 6s to hit, you'd kind of have to go through them and pick out the 6s yourself. Which can be a little tedious, but that's just kind of, you know, that's just the name of the game. It's just like it would be playing normal tabletop. Other than that, if you need any kind of additional dice or objects or anything, you can go to Objects, you can go to Components, and you can find some potentially interesting things here, such as coins if you want to do a coin flip. You can go to dice if you want to create some just really basic dice to get you through the day. RPG kit if you want to try messing around with that. Tools for like calculators or turn counters or even MP3 players. Other than that, the only other thing I really need to show you, I think that's about everything. Oh, the measuring system, of course. So wherever your hand is, if you hold down the tab button, it'll immediately create a ruler that measures on inches, which is very convenient for 40k and Age of Sigmar, as the inch system is what they use. And it'll do it from anywhere you just hit the tab button. If you're holding down the tab button and you left click, it'll also make a notification sound and have these nice little arrows pointing for just a few seconds to whatever it is you're trying to signify. Whenever you're playing with someone, you can all see each other's hands unless you turn that feature off. But that can be convenient for just keeping an eye on what your opponent is looking at, or if they roll dice, you know which dice are being rolled, so you can kind of go and check on them yourself. To measure models' movement, all you do is you pick up the model, hold down the tab button, and it'll tell you exactly how far the model is moving, both horizontally and vertically, which can be super helpful if you're trying to climb hills or climb buildings, which can be done in 40K, for instance. Though when you do pick somebody up, it can be a little bit tedious to try and get them back to that exact 0.0. You kind of have to just finagle it. Let's see if I can get it. 1 point. There we go. Boom. Other than that, there's of course a vector paint key here, which you can just click on draw, which will allow you to draw whatever you want. If you're trying to like draw somebody's attention to something or what have you, and there's of course an eraser. Other than that, there are other tools you can mess around with, but that's basically all you need to know. I would encourage to play with your opponent in a Discord server, but if you don't want to, you can of course just simply hit enter and talk within the game tab. Other than that, that pretty much wraps up everything. The last thing I want to show you guys is if you go to the workshop, you can go to certain maps, and the reason I like Age of Sigmar maps more, for instance, is let's say I go to this Age of Sigmar Dead Ruins map. This was made most likely by a fellow named Liquid Snake, who is my favorite modder when it comes to map making. And the reason is, okay, this one's not a good example, but one thing he does is they put tokens out here and 12-inch rulers, which you can use for just a stagnant deployment zone, which can be super handy. And then, of course, they have objective flags that you can mess around with if you can get them to be interactable. And then some little, just various things, and they have the rules up here. This map didn't quite have what I was looking for, but that is one thing I like about the Age of Sigmar maps. Let's try a different one. Let's go here. This one might be a good example. Ah, yes. So this is a nice 6x4 map. Of course, if you play Age of Sigmar, there's some nice dice out here, of course. They have, the Age of Sigmar guys tend to put the rules out on the side, which can be very nice, so you don't have to open your own book. You can just kind of come over here and look at whatever you need to look to see the free rules. But this is what I really like, is they have these giant bags full of fantasy terrain, which you can, of course, use for 40K as well. Even in the dark future of the 41st millennium, there's still rolling fields out there. So the easiest way to look through these bags is you right-click, you go to search, and it will show you everything that's inside the bag. So, for instance, you could find like a monument or a spooky tree or a statue that fell over. Some of these were created by hand, but we're not given custom. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Effects, I guess. So they're carved properly, but they have this weird. They look like they're made out of like paper mache or something. That's because they weren't giving. They're unique textures. There we go. They were made using a very simple system that allowed them to be carved, essentially. And you can just use these to create whatever terrain you need to, depending on what the modder has made available for you. So it's good to explore the workshop. In addition, there's even bags within bags. For instance, I could drag out this bag, and if I just left click and drag, it'll just pull stuff out. But like here are all river tiles that I can use to create unique rivers, which can be very, very convenient. In any event, that will do it for this little tutorial. We'll go ahead and step into the regular workshop now. And then, for those of you who don't mind having the patience, I have a little plug to do, if you'll bear with me. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of this, and we're going to look at some mods. So here's Tabletop Simulator, among many other games that I have. And what you will essentially do is go to Workshop, browse the Workshop. You can, of course, talk to people or search communities to try and find the best mods, or knowing certain people like Liquid Snake might help narrow down your search. But for instance, I can type in 40K Tyranids, hit enter, and it'll show me a variety of answers. And probably the best thing to do is not to sort by relevance, but by popularity. That'll usually help you find the best ones. and you want to search over a period of forever if possible. For some reason, this one's only letting me search for a week, which is odd. Most of the time, it lets you do better than that, but it doesn't matter. So, for instance, I can see that there are a couple of different ones here. If you click on them, you can usually find the details. If you're lucky, you'll find some pictures as well. But usually, if you scroll down, it'll tell you, like, this one's only a Maliceptor. Probably not what we're looking for. This one is only an Exocrid, for instance. This one has a Jormonger Hive fleet, but as we can see from this picture and from the description down here, it's not the full fleet yet. This is just some of the models that we would need, but not all of them. But then we see this one by JangoBot, and it has everything, as you can see on this very long list. And of course, you can just look up whatever faction you need, and feel free to ask around if you can't find your faction, because somebody should know how to make it. Some of them are fairly new, like there's a Death Guard one that's being worked on right now that I believe is close to being released publicly. But I'm not going to bother showing that today. In any event, that pretty much does it, and of course for maps you would just look up 40k maps, or something along those lines, and just find the map that best suits you. In any event, the little plug that I want to give today is I have recently partnered with a company called TourGuard. And TourGuard, for those of you who don't know, is essentially they're a company that does what are VPNs. And it's literally just TourGuard.com. And basically what they do is they protect your computer and your internet access, more importantly, from prying eyes. For those of you who care about your security and your privacy, this could be a service that you might be interested in. And these guys, the one thing I like about them when they approach me, I did my research on them to make sure that they were well liked. As you can see, there's a number of magazines and online sites that are pretty satisfied with their services, or have at least examined them. They're not super shady or anything. They're very nice to talk to. They of course have live help, 24/7 help if you need it. But they can help protect your internet use from your internet provider themselves, which in the current era of net neutrality is something that's important to a lot of people. Especially if your company might be like Comcast or someone who's a little more on the sketch side and just stealing your information and selling it. These things can help protect your computer. And they have many different services, all of which are fairly cheap right off the bat, that you can look into. They also sell physical products as well. For instance, most people know that if you were to buy a VPN, although these guys have ways to deal with it, most VPNs might slow down your internet a little bit, but if you were to, for instance, if you didn't want to pay for one of these higher ones, but just wanted to have something very simple and easy to install, you could just buy a router that has VPNs built into it, which would take away all of the technical mumbo jumbo you have to do for someone like me. I'm not very skilled when it comes to crazy computer things. And you can see here they have custom routers that you can buy that are extremely good and extremely helpful. Now my partnership with these guys is pretty straightforward. Basically, if you decide to go through and purchase a router or a service or what have you to keep you safe in this modern age, all you have to do at the very end at sign out, it'll ask you for a promotional code on the final checkout page on the bottom left, and if you type in lsotec_red_host, just like this right up here, what it will allow you to do is it will save you, I believe, 10% off all your purchases. So you'll save some money, I'll make some money. It's completely optional, of course. It's just a way to help me out while helping yourself out. I know I'm looking into getting protective services myself. I literally just yesterday, someone, a colleague of mine in the YouTube community literally demonstrated how easy it was to track down my location. And I didn't ask him to do it. He was just like, hey, let's hop into a Total War game real quick. And I said, okay, literally 2 seconds. And then he was able to send me a page over Discord that had narrowed down my location to the town next to me, which is very, very close. Very eerily close. So if you don't want people able to do that, if you don't want, you know, and these services can help protect you from people who are just trying to spy on you, people who are trying to find your location, people who are trying to get your information, and of course, people who are trying to swat you. If you're if you're maybe into streaming or YouTubing, and that's a legitimate fear that you suffer from, which is of course a very scary and real thing. These guys can help protect you from that. So for those of you who are interested in looking into that, feel free to do so. Of course, I would always recommend you do your own background checks to make sure that you're comfortable with this company if you decide to invest in their service. They don't save any of your information that they protect you from. That's one of their big hallmarks. And they also, if you buy service with them, allow you to put multiple devices based on your service, including mobile devices, which is something very unique about them. A lot of VPN companies don't allow you to put it on like tablets or phones or what have you. These guys do, and that can be really nice. So for those of you that are interested, that's an alternate way to protect me while also saving yourself, or not protect me, help me out financially, while also buying a great service for yourself. In addition to, of course, Patreon or just straightforward donations for those of you who are interested in those things. In any event, I appreciate you guys watching the video. We'll be talking more about TorGuard at the end of videos going forward, just as little plugs, but I'm going to try and make sure they're at the end so there's nothing behind it, so if you just want to skip it, you can. In any event, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you all had a great Easter, or April Fool's Day, depending on which or both you celebrated, and I will catch you around next time. Bye. Alright, I know I said bye a second ago, but I realized that I need to fix this with my OBS. It's not showing the right side of my screen for some reason. So for those of you who are interested in getting the TorGuard service, the promotional code is LSOTEC_red_host right up here in the top. It was on the far right, so you might not have seen it. So for those of you who are interested, that's right there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll be fixing this, especially before the next RP session, because otherwise you won't be able to see the dice rolls, and that's half the fun. So I'll catch you guys later. Bye.